I'm Stephen Van Loffold, founder of eSupply Canada, and we are the nation's leading Indigenous-owned distributor of business and industrial supplies. I often get asked, how did I pivot from an executive career to basically selling office supplies? And honestly, like many entrepreneurs, I saw a gap in the market. If I go back a few years ago, I was living in Toronto, working my way up the corporate ladder. And although things were going well, I had gotten to a point where I wanted to take everything that I had learned and bring it home and help my community move forward. And it just so happened that around this time, I was actually elected to council. And so I packed up my family, I moved back home, and I was eager to really help drive the community forward. But once I got involved at that level, you started seeing how communities actually operate behind the scenes. And so, for instance, you have programs, you have staff, you've got buildings, maintenance, supplies, vehicles, technology, essentially everything that is required to keep a community and its citizens safe. But what I also noted was that almost everything had to be purchased from outside of the community. And that's because there simply wasn't enough businesses in place locally to be able to support that. So things like office supplies and furniture and tools and machinery, all of that, the list goes on, all had to be procured from outside of the community. And so what would happen is money would come in and it would go right back out just as quickly for those supplies. Economists call it economic leakage, and it is a major issue facing many Indigenous communities. And although I wasn't thinking about the terminology, I was thinking about the impact that this was having. And I asked myself, how are we supposed to diversify and grow economically if every single dollar leaves the community? And what stood out to me as all of this was happening is that we had some pretty major industrial projects that were taking place throughout the territory. We had a lot of economic activity happening around us, but because we lacked that business infrastructure to participate, very little of that opportunity was actually being captured by the community. And so while I was contemplating these issues, it just so happened that a delivery truck from a big box office supplier was making one of its regular stops. And that's when it clicked for me. Office supplies. That really was the aha moment. And so what I did was I sat down with our finance director and I said, how much are we spending on office supplies? And he ran the numbers, and it turns out that we as a community were spending almost $200,000 a year at that local office supplier. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, that is a lot of money, and no one really thinks about it. And honestly, I figured, if we were spending that kind of money, surely there had to be some kind of relationship there. Because this was also around Christmas time, and I was helping lead our children's toy drive. And so being the salesman that I am, I figured I'm going to hit up our vendors, all of our community vendors, including that local office supplier. And so I went into the store and I asked if they would support the toys drive. Nothing crazy, just a nominal donation to, help support our kids in the community. And I was basically told to go pound sand and apply online for corporate giving, just like everyone else. That was it. And I remember leaving there. I was pretty pissed. Not because they had said no, but because it made me realize that they didn't care about our business. They didn't care about our kids. They didn't care about our issues, and they didn't have to support us. That's because they got our business out of necessity for the most part. We need office supplies. And so year after year, we would just keep going back to them. They were the household name. And if you add it up, it's millions of dollars over the year. And they didn't have to do anything except exist. And so the more I thought about it, the more I realized that this issue of our business being taken for granted, it probably wasn't unique to us. And so what I did is I started digging into it. I started looking at what First Nations across the country were spending every day on operational supplies. Think about it. Computers, office supplies, furniture, janitorial products, everything. And when you add it up, that number is massive. Close to $1 billion a year collectively. But every town, institution, organization, they all need this to operate as well. And they're all defaulting to the big box guys. And so That's when I saw the gap in the market. And it was also during this time that I was obviously still on council and I was traveling a lot to work. And so I would fill my time by listening to podcasts. And one of my favorite podcasts is How I Built This. And 2 episodes stand out. The one with the founders of Wayfair and Shopify. And that was it. That was when the business model clicked. Got supplies, e-commerce, and drop shipping. And the beauty of drop shipping is that I didn't need to buy the inventory up front or even warehouse the products. And so what that did is it reduced my risk at overhead and allowed me to pass those savings off to our customers in order to be able to compete on price with the big players. And that's it. I got to work building eSupply Canada. And here we are 6 years later. We have grown into the nation's leading Indigenous-owned distributor of business and industrial supplies. We compete on everything everyone else does. But from day one, I wanted to build a company that did more than just sell products. Of course, based on the experience I had just gone through. I wanted to prove that even something as basic as office supplies could be used to create broader impact. And so what I did is I built community impact directly into the business through things like our eSupply Canada Future Leader Scholarship Initiative and other giving programs that we've set up to help support local priorities through everyday purchasing. Businesses, organizations, and everyday Canadians, they connect with that. They like knowing that when they come to eSupply Canada, their dollars are going to something bigger. And really, that's what eSupply Canada was built around. Impact and doing things differently. And so in the end, did I make a conscious decision to start selling office supplies? I suppose I did. But what I really saw was a market that everyone overlooked and also took for granted. I saw a massive amount of money leaving our communities every year, hindering economic growth. And I also saw an opportunity to build something better. And I guess if there's any lesson in all of this, it's this. Never take your customers for granted. Because sometimes that person that you brush off might just end up being your competition. If you want to learn more about what we do and the impact we have and how your purchasing can help scale that impact, check us out at esupplycanada.ca.